Welcome, everyone. Call the meeting of the Barre City Planning Commission for Thursday, July 19th, 2026 to order. And the next item on the agenda is adjustments to the agenda. Does anybody have any adjustments to the agenda? I think the only adjustment I would suggest is when we start the commission welcome, we'll give everybody a chance to introduce themselves and let us know who you are. So the next item is public comment. If there's anything or anybody that wants to speak on an item that's not on the agenda, that's a member of the public, you're welcome to, but I don't think there's any members of the public other than commissioners here. So we can go on to approval of the minutes. We have the minutes from the May 14th, 2026 meeting in the packet. So I would welcome a motion to accept the minutes. It's a little bit awkward because none of you were at that meeting. Or maybe, I guess, Kat, well, you were. But I don't think that that prevents people from moving or voting on the minutes if they choose to.
Right, so I second the motion.
Okay, I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and are there any adjustments or amendments that anybody has to offer? If not, we can vote on the motion, and all in favor can say aye or raise your hand, or both. I think one of the rules is when we do meetings that are hybrid, you're supposed to allow people to raise their hand. Technically, I think we could actually take roll call votes, but unless there's a split decision, probably don't need to do that. So the next item is commission welcome, tools and requirement. And as I said, I think maybe the best way to start is to give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves. So I guess I'll start. I'm David Sickle. I am been on the Planning Commission for quite a few years, I think over 20, which is a long time. And I'm retired. I live in the city, but the better part of my career was spent in local government, and particularly I worked at the Vermont League of Cities and Towns in their insurance and risk management area, and actually helped found the insurance fund that most municipalities in Vermont are now participating in. So, and before that, I actually had early in my career assistant or administrative assistant city manager work as an assistant manager and also as a town planner. So that's me. So maybe we can go around the table. You guys can figure out who gets to go first. Just tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got here.
The camera was on me, so that's why I was going to volunteer as tribute. But hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here. My name's Erica Rossett. I've been a Barre resident for almost 4 years. My day job, I'm working at a global NGO where we look at climate solutions for mostly agriculture, but looking across supply chains to make sure what we're doing is sustainable. So I feel like there could be some overlap in local planning, so we'll see. And yeah, just happy to be here. Thank you.
Go for it, Wilson.
Yeah, my name is Wilson Ballantyne. I'm 36. I've been living in the area now for about 10 years. I am a co-owner of a restaurant right here in town, Pearl Street Pizza. And technically I'm a Barre Town resident, don't tell anybody, but I'm happy to try to be involved and continue to build my involvement in this community. And yeah, learn more, better myself. So that's why I'm here.
My name is Erica Smith. I am also been living in Barre for this will be my 3rd year. And I moved here to be closer to work, which I work at a middle and high school as a speech language pathologist. So hopefully a lot of knowledge about community buildings, around communication, around like social engineering. I'm hoping that there'll be some like structure, like some transfer of skills for this position. And yeah, I'm also looking forward to just being more involved and the community that I live in.
I am Kat Allen. I am a public sector consultant by day, specializing in software modernization, future planning and policy, as well as business process reengineering for government. I have been a Barre resident officially now for 4 years. The fourth was our 4th-year anniversary. And my husband and I also own a downtown business, the Barre Social Club. Did it, Maddie?
Hey everybody, my name's Maddie Cobb. I own Slowpoke, a store on Main Street, the clothing store on Main Street, and I own a house in Ward 2. I am spent my undergrad actually doing a lot of urban planning work, so it's fun to get back into the world of dreaming big about the places we live. And I'm really excited to get to know the few of you who I don't know already. And I hope to be there in person too. Just this Thursday was a little wonky. Yeah, and I look forward to being surrounded by a group of people that want the best for our little city.
Hey, Wendy's next up.
Hi, I'm Wendy Ducey. I have lived in Barre for about 16 and a half years. I've been on Planning Commission for 2 years and just renewed my term. Let's see. My day job is I work for the Agency of Transportation. I've worked there for 18 and a half years. So my work there has primarily focused around research and materials, and I now manage construction contracting for the agency. So that's what I do there. I have a part-time craft business. I hand paint ornaments. My husband has a electrical contracting business in Barre, him and his brothers. They grew up in Barre, so they're well rooted here. So we will be in Barre for a long, long time, probably forever. So I've always been interested in, volunteering and helping out the community, and I felt like this was a good way to do that. So yeah, that's a little about me. I'm excited. We have so many new members today. I was surprised when I saw your email, Jana. I was like, oh, wow, there's more than 3 of us. Great.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Janet, maybe you could take a minute to introduce yourself and then take things over as far as talking a little bit about all the material that was in the packet.
Sure.
A lot of reading.
Yes, and I'll make this all available to people whenever they want it. Janet Shabney, Planning Director for the City of Barre, in charge of planning, permitting, and assessing. I've been here 14 years. Before that, I had a career in solid waste for over 15 years. I've been an adult long resident of Woodbury, raised my family there. So yeah, I manage grants, I do planning, I manage the permit administrator, a whole bunch of stuff in the city. So I'm here anytime you guys have a question.
Yeah. Janet is very busy these days, and probably a week from now you'll be even busier.
Yes, if you don't find me crying in the corner. Yeah, so let's move on with the welcome tools. I know there was a lot, right? Let's see. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at the packet, but I put together this little 2-page written welcome, which I normally would email to each of you individually as you join. But since we had a global 4 to 5 new membership, I did it this way. There's some clickable links within the packet. I've included some handouts that we've received from various places throughout the years, from the league, attorneys, from regional planning. Christian actually had an individual that worked for him 2 years ago now, when he was in New York. He put together that lovely packet that kind of is very colorful with the blue in the background. It goes through what is planning, what is permitting, and a lot of it speaks to what is the Development Review Board. They are our AMP, their municipal panel. So ultimately, what you folks get to do is you're policymakers, and you draft decisions to present to city council and hope that they are on board with your feelings and what you presented, and then the DRB executes those things. So you draft the municipal plan, you draft changes to the zoning ordinance, present those to city council, it becomes their document, and they see it through to fruition. And so that's really a very condensed version of what the planning commission does, but it's mired in a lot of policy, a lot of land use, a lot of, housing is the word of the day, right? We're all trying to find housing for everybody, and uses widely throughout the city. And, we're always looking to grow. And Barre City has very little real estate left to grow. So trying to be as creative as possible when some of our bigger businesses eventually leave the north end. We're all waiting for what's going to happen with Arcade Miles, for example. They said once their new facility is built in Berlin, they will vacate Barre City. What does that do for our north end, right? So we think about what can we do in the floodplain, in the districts. Do the zoning districts make sense anymore? We wrote an update to the zoning in 2019. That was, 7 years ago. Things have changed. Feelings have changed. I can tell you that one thing we're gonna have to address within the next 6 to 8 months is Spalding High School has chunked off from the, what do you call it, Career Center? The Career Center is like its own district. They are looking at the tire place across the street to move some of their students over there. It's not zoned for a school currently. So we have to start keeping our ears to the ground and listening to what's happening and where do we need to make changes or not make changes. So that's really what it is in a nutshell. So like I said, I've given you clickable links. You all have these documents from the packet. I can send them to you separately. Excellent information that I've collected from a lot of other places to dissect what is planning and what is the planning vision. But if you ever have any questions, you know where I'm at. I'm always down there.
Yeah. One thing that's coming forward that we'll have to think about is the city plan will need to be redone before too long. The plan that we have now is reaching the end of its life, and the state requires that you revisit city plans or town plans. I think it's every 8 years now, and we're not that far from it. And these projects, that's not like a 2-week project. That's like a months and months project with probably some consultant assistance and as much public input as we can get. Just FYI, you should all probably look at the current plan, but the plan that was adopted the last time, what was that, in like 2020 or something like that?
You're correct, 2020.
Was basically a rewrite of the existing plan. So the sort of chassis of the whole thing is pretty old. And at least in my view, we probably ought to be taking a fresh start and looking at what we want for themes. We've talked about that at previous planning commission meetings previously, but probably the new plan will look very different than the existing one. And you're all here on the ground floor to help make that happen and provide some fresh insights. So I think that's coming up, and I think Janet's in the process of getting an RFP together to try to find a consultant. We have funding for that to get that process underway. So I would add that as something just for people to be thinking about, because the city plan is a major undertaking, and it sort of lays out what the vision is for the community over a pretty good period of time. So having said that, does anyone else want to add anything to discussion about welcome and tools and things to happen or whatever. Yes, Maddie.
Hey, yeah, I was just curious. I see like two other people, one person in the room and one person on the Zoom that did not introduce themselves. So I was just curious who they were.
Oh, uh, they are the two people from the Regional Planning Commission. And when we get to their item on the agenda, they will have ample time to introduce themselves.
Great, thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the annual election of officers. We elect a chair, a vice chair, and we can elect a secretary. So I've been the chair for a few years now. I'm happy to continue. I'm happy if somebody else wants it. But we could probably open the floor for nominations for chair of the planning commission. I think Wendy is the vice chair and the secretary is no longer on the commission.
Can we get
So
an explanation of what the roles and responsibilities are of the positions?
Yeah, that
Sure.
was in the document, the rules of procedure, but David, or the chair, runs the meeting. Basically what they do, they run the meeting, set agendas with me, and the vice chair steps in when the chair is not available.
And the secretary takes minutes and gets them written up to comply with the statutory timeframes, which I think is 5 business days after the meeting.
Consecutive
We
day.
had is it consecutive days? Not
Yes.
business days. Okay. But those have to be written up and they have to be posted or you can get some issues that could come up. So in the past, both Janet has done minutes, but also commission members have. And I see Wendy has her hand up.
I was just gonna make a motion. You were looking for motions, right?
Yes.
Or I would make a motion for David to remain as chair, since you're
Okay.
willing.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Wilson seconded.
Oh, okay. I can't see everybody in the screen. So there's a motion and a second. Are there any other nominations for chair? And am I missing anybody in the room or are we all set? If not, we could take a vote on whether you would like me to continue as chair of the commission. So all in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
And okay, so it looks like I'm going to get another year to be your fearless leader. But I would like people to think about going forward, about whether some of you might want to step in for some of these things in the future. So the next is the vice chair. Wendy is currently the vice chair. We could open nominations for vice chair for the commission. Anybody want to make a nomination?
I think we're all happy to learn.
Pardon? I couldn't hear that.
Oh, I said, I think we're all happy to learn from people that have been in the positions as we're all new.
Yeah, okay. So I would take that maybe to be a nomination for Wendy. And if that's the case, then are there any other nominations? Okay, and seeing none, we can vote on that. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand. And any opposed? So Wendy, you're going to get to continue as the vice chair. Congratulations.
Sounds good.
And the final piece is secretary. Is there somebody who would be interested or willing to do that? I think Wilson mentioned he might be, but he might have had some time to think about it too.
Not a problem with that at all. I need to get a new computer that I can type on because I won't be able to write as fast, I don't believe, but I can type quickly. So.
I mean,
So
one of the
What we used to do is sometimes the former secretary just really wanted to focus in on the meeting,
Mhm.
and I would email him the following morning the recording,
Okay.
if that helps,
Yeah.
to type up the minutes.
Sure.
And Joe told me to let whoever decided they might want the position, he's got a template he's willing to share, and he would talk to anybody about any pointers that he's learned over his.
Yeah.
Cool.
Over the years, I've been secretary and I actually am for a number of organizations, and a template really helps just to set some things up and, get the names and attendance. And the other thing, at least in my view, is generally minutes do not have to be exhaustive. They don't have to be verbatim of what's said. They have to convey the gist of the meeting and actions that were taken. So uh, it's basically more of a summary, and particularly noting when motions are made and seconded and voted on, what happened and what the motion was. Those things have to be as accurate as possible, but you don't have to get into all the weeds of discussions unless there seems to be something that's particularly relevant or important or new that might get there. So just some thoughts of that.
Yeah, I would take that on. Yeah, I'll go for it, yeah.
Okay. Does anybody object to that? If not, we could take a vote. So Wilson has volunteered to be the secretary, and all in favor of appointing Wilson as secretary, raise your hand or say aye.
I
Okay. Congratulations.
Yes.
And Janet especially wishes you congratulations, because otherwise she would be doing it, and it just
I
makes it
would
a little
rely
easier.
solely on the recording.
Yeah, I got you, Janet.
Yeah. So next item is the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission Regional Plan, Future Land Use Map, and Regional Housing Project. So I can turn that over to folks from CVRPC, and maybe you could introduce yourself and get the discussion started.
Sure. Got Christian Meyer in the room. I'm director at the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. I'm going to give one to Janet just to make sure she takes a good look at it. I want to see. Okay. I want to make sure you're
Next to
expert.
Erica too. I'll just
You're,
move over.
oh,
next to
okay,
Erica.
perfect. Just so your expert eye has a chance to
Yeah.
have a big format one. So Christian Meyer, director of Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. Brian, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, folks. I'm Brian Voigt, Program Manager here at the Regional Planning Commission.
So recognizing that we do have some new planning commissioners in the room, I'll try to give a little more background as we roll into this, and then Brian can jump in. He's our geospatial expert and did all the mapping and understands that process better than certainly I do and can explain it better. Act 181, you may have heard about it, the whole Tier 3 kerfuffle of the last year came out of Act 181. Less controversial was the regional future land use area maps, or FLUA maps. We have had a regional land use map for a long time, future land use map for a long time, but this Act 181, really turbocharged our map by giving it a extra level of scrutiny. Regional plans are now reviewed by the Land Use Review Board and approved by the state, where prior it was up to our commissioners, including Janet, just to adopt our local plan. The reason additional scrutiny was given is because 4 land use areas, what we'll call our downtown growth areas, open the door to a municipality seeking additional exemptions and incentives to spur on development. So if a portion of your municipality is either a village area, a future land use, a future growth area, or a downtown center or a village center, you can now either opt in through the Regional Planning Commission for Tier 1B, or apply to the Land Use Review Board for Tier 1A status. And what that means, and some of this is explained in our little printout we sent you, is in a Tier 1B area, which, like I said, you opt in through your governing body will opt in through the RPC. In those areas, for developments where there are 50 residential units or fewer, the only level of permitting necessary will be the local zoning regs and additional state permitting, wetland permits, water, wastewater permits, etc. But no Act 250. Normally, Act 250 kicks in at 9 units or 10 units or more. What this does is push the threshold for that Tier 1B up to 50 units or 10 acres of disturbed land. So the idea was that to create a simple path for those areas where communities have the resources and regulations in place to more easily attract and spur on new housing development. Tier 1A, like I said, again, same land use areas, principally downtown center, village center, and future growth area. Those areas a municipality can apply to the land use review board to get full exemption from Act 250. Now, the only governing regulations would be local regulations. And the whole idea was to say, Act 250 is overseeing development statewide. We're saying what you can't do, where municipalities have capacity. Let's say the areas where we want to encourage growth. So, in your packet we passed on, I'll let Brian get into more details on how that map was created, but in your packet we've included a couple things. One, some basic information on Tier 1A, Tier 1B, this sort of this blue and white table, so you can understand some of the benefits. A draft resolution, which your governing body, presumably on the recommendation from their planning commission, would act on. And that would be the sole action needed for Barre to opt into Tier 1B in certain areas. There's additional descriptions as you go through on some of the areas, but I want to jump ahead to the housing targets. Also an act, well, I guess it was technically in the Home Act, so 2023, they established housing targets for the state, or rather the legislature stated that ACCD, Agency of Commerce and Community Development, would develop housing targets for the state and distribute those to the regions. The regions would then have to distribute those housing targets to each of their municipalities, with the one caveat: a majority of those housing units must be assigned based on or assigned with the intent of fitting into those downtown and growth areas, that village center, downtown center, future growth area, village area, or dark purple, pink, lighter pink, and etc. So CPRPC developed a methodology based on that recommendation, very similar to other regions in the state. We put 60% of the housing targets in municipal, assigned 60% of the housing targets to municipalities based on the acreage of future land use areas that were called out. And then the other 40% were assigned based on population. So on one hand, we're looking at that state requirement to encourage new housing in our existing centers or designated centers. And on the other hand, we're recognizing where the municipalities are either growing the fastest or have the sort of largest, the history of the highest population. Those, you can kind of see a breakout of the entire region, how it came down. Again, on page 13 of the little packet we sent, there's a nice little bar chart. This is based on the low end of the 2030 estimates. The numbers are big. This was very much a public policy statement by the legislature. We want to grow the population in Vermont. And so we're going to give you, as some people call them, aspirational targets to meet. What I like to think of when you look at this target is, does that mix kind of feel right? Do we see the general proportions lining up? Montpelier is gung-ho. They have a lot of open space they've targeted for new growth and development. So not surprisingly, they're ending up on one end of the chart with 529 units conceivably within the next 4 years now. Obviously, that's more than a little. That's quite a hurdle to jump, given they're probably building maybe 20 units a year at this point. Barre City's right there with number 2. One, because you have a large amount of surface area that's in the downtown and the adjacent planned growth area, but you also are our biggest municipality by population. And then going down from there, Berlin, they're very aggressive in wanting to attract new housing. Barre Town has 4 village designations. So they also have a lot, they're one of our bigger communities. I think they might even be bigger than Montpelier. We're getting close to it. Barre town has been growing very quickly, but they're also have a fair amount of those downtown growth areas. So, and then it goes down from there with Woodbury, Janet at 18.
I have a question. So on some research that I had done the past few months, I think the census, like last census data said that there were currently about 4,000 housing units in Barre.
Mm-hmm.
So this is almost a 10%
It's massive.
increase.
And this is the low end of, well, this is the low end of the 5-year estimate. When you begin to look out, so looking a little further down in our packet here, maybe it makes more sense to pick that 2050 point, because that's, the reality is it takes time to implement the land use policy, for developers to figure out the policies, for investment to be lined up, for permitting to be lined up. So really, the engine really doesn't start turning until you get out 5 years probably anyway. But now we're talking about 1,000 new units by 2050.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In 4 square miles. Okay, so I have a couple questions.
Okay.
I'm gonna like backtrack just a little bit. So these are the current, this is like the future zoning. This is completely separate from our municipal zoning.
No, it's not zoning.
I want to jump right in there, because the regional future land use map does not impact, is not regulatory
Great.
in any way. We do not impose any requirements on the municipalities through the future land use map.
Okay.
It is really just opens the door to additional incentives.
Okay. So then, my understanding of Act 250 is that municipalities are able to essentially state what types of activities can happen within zones within a community, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then is this 181 in Tier 1B specific to housing, or how else does it impact like overall land use and zoning?
Okay, yeah, so Tier 1B, let's put a pin in the question. We do want to come back to it. So the question is, just make sure I heard it right, what are the impacts of the regional future land use mapping on housing and everything else?
Yeah, I guess.
Is that a fair paraphrase?
Yeah, like I understand that the focus is on adding housing. I'm curious where Prospect Heights is on this map.
That's gonna have to change.
Okay.
Yeah, that was one. That was going to be one of my comments. Was there's some things on the map that I think would be detrimental to developing housing in the city. And I'll get to that later. But I think, Kat, part of your question is about how the city relates to Act 250. And that's where the city plan is really important, because that's where it lays out those sorts of things that the Act 250 process has to consider, if I understand it correctly.
But the plan isn't a regulatory document. The ordinances document is a regulatory document, right?
That's correct.
So I think it's the regulatory document that actually sets the land use and zoning restriction.
The regulatory document sets the zoning, regulatory document sets those things, but the plan is what relates to Act 250 and whether a general use is appropriate with what the city says their plan and vision is for the development. So that's why it's so important to get the city plan done and up to date. And then the zoning is what takes the zoning ordinance and all, in theory, takes what's in the city plan and places that into ordinance and regulations to enable some of those things in the plan to be accomplished. I think that's kind of the process. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but the plan is what sort of starts that whole thing, and what if you're going to object to an Act 250 permit from a municipal standpoint, it's because what's being proposed does not comply with what the city's plan is. Maybe, again, somebody could add some more detail to that, but that's my general understanding, and that's one of the reasons the city plan is so important, to have one that's current and not expired.
Are you saying talking specifically about 250 exemptions?
No. No, that would be, doesn't apply to 250 exemptions. It applies to individual Act 250 permits that people might be in favor of or opposed to. And one of the criteria, I think, that the Act 250 commissions have to look at is what's in the city plan. Am I missing something?
That's fair. So the Act 250 permit goes in, one of the things they look at when reviewing it is what does the city plan say about it? And if it has strong language like this area shall be our conservation area,
Right.
then they may reject a permit application based on the city plan vision of that area. That's not zoning.
Right. But our land use classifications are also tied to Act 250. Like Act 250 is the legislative foundation for land use.
If something doesn't meet the zoning requirements, it can't even get to an Act 250 because it's not going to meet the municipal zoning requirements. So it doesn't even have an opportunity to get an Act 250 hearing because it's going to be denied at the local level.
Okay. So then Tier 1B, in 5 sentences, is meant to benefit communities how?
Tier 1B removes Act 250 for housing developments up to 50 units. That means now it means your local zoning, your local permitting are the only permitting processes a developer would need to go to. So the idea is instead of having two prongs of permitting, they just have one.
Great.
And I would just want to pivot to Brian when we get a chance, because I want him to introduce how the map was created so you have a little more understanding why it looks the way it does. And then we can talk about opportunities where we think we should maybe be changing lines or redrawing lines, stuff we don't know about at the regional level that you can help bring to our attention.
Yes, your comment is very important, Brian, because it's tied to the acreage. Tier 1B, up to 50 units on up to 10 acres. Our largest parcel in Barre City is, well, it's Nelson Giacomo's land, but other than that, it's less than 5 acres. So,
It's all going to be 50 units, that's the only trigger really.
Yeah.
Except for Crossway.
But I don't even think they're looking at 50 units anymore with the wetlands pushback.
no, Prospect Heights, we're looking at a total of, is it 92?
It's 90 some odd to above 100 potentially.
That's with the marshland issue.
I don't know what the acreage
It
is.
won't be in the wetland area, but we're talking about building like townhouses, multi-unit buildings in addition to single family.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's 90 plus units, but not 90 parcels of land, if that helps tie us down.
All right, I think you're up, Brian.
Brian, let me know if you can't take over the screen if that's what you'd like. The share button has changed.
Okay, I just sent you a request.
Oh, wow. There you go.
No, I just have to find which my many screens is the right screen to show you. Oh, here we go. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Should just be a big white box at this point. I'll get into that in a minute. Thanks, Janet. Yeah, so thanks, folks. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I had another meeting that just bumped up against this one and jumped from one Zoom to another safely, of course. So I want to talk about the map here just for a minute, and then I'm going to show you a really brief overview of how we're soliciting feedback and how you can either provide feedback or tell your friends to look at the map and provide feedback as well. So Act 181, one of the requirements from Act 181 was that a statewide methodology for developing the future land use map was created. And so VAPTA, the Vermont Association of Planning and Development Agencies, which for the most part is just the regional planning commissions, but there are a couple other organizations included as well. So there was a committee within VAPTA that worked on developing the methodology. So essentially, the legislature provided a definition of each one of the land use classes, the downtown center, the planned growth area, the village center, et cetera. And the VAPTA subcommittee developed the methodology for assigning locations within the region to those individual land use classes. And as you might imagine, there's a lot of data that underlies this. So we have really good statewide geographic information systems, GIS data resources available to us. And so some of that VAPTA methodology points us directly towards specific data sets that we use in doing this deliberation. But in addition to that, we also looked at things like the municipal plan. So I think it was David earlier that was mentioning at least one of the many reasons why a municipal plan is an important thing. So we looked at the municipal plan, and in particular, your future land use map within the municipal plan. So for those of you folks that are new, your municipal plan includes a future land use map specific to your municipality. And the regional plan includes a future land use map for the entire region that in large part is built off of the local level future land use maps. I also looked at your zoning bylaws as well. So there's sort of multiple pieces of information coming from the municipal level, all of the statewide data that we have, and some, and I'm not sure if Barry fits this, but there were some municipalities that we got data directly from the municipality. I think I already had the one big piece, which is your water and sewer service areas. That's really one of the big data sets from municipalities that we rely on. And, so over the top of all those different data points is that VAPTA methodology. So it's not so much that I started with an idea and developed this map. It was more like read the VAPTA methodology. I've been working on GIS in the state of Vermont for about 2.5 decades at this point, so I'm fairly well versed in the available data, and really just trying to balance all of these different inputs and then meet the objectives of that statewide methodology, which is really intended to provide a standardized approach for all of the regional planning commissions to develop this future regional future land use map. Now, Christian mentioned already, we've got these sort of core four areas: the downtown center, village center, planned growth area, and village area. Barre City does not include those last two, but you do have a fairly large downtown center and a very substantial amount of land designated as planned growth area currently. Two other things that I'll mention here. One thing that was interesting as I was reviewing Barry's zoning bylaws and working my way through the map, I did make some progress, and then I had to sort of backpedal a little bit because I had this sort of light bulb go off, and it said moderate density in Barre City is very high density in most of our other places in the region. So originally I was like, oh, moderate density, okay, that maybe fits closer into that rural general class. And then like I said, I sort of took a few steps back and said that doesn't actually make sense because in Barre, as you all know, it's a small area with a lot of parcels and a lot of people. So refactored that a little bit. Let's talk briefly about the rural classes, and I'll try not to get on my Act 181 soapbox and talk about all the things I don't like about this, but I might spill into that a little bit. Christian's heard it way too many times before. As part of the land use classification scheme, the legislature set out 3 rural classes. So rural general, which is what you see in that sort of yellowish color, rural ag and forestry, which is a significant component of Vermont's working landscape. So when we think about rural ag and forestry, we're thinking about parcels that are larger than 20 acres in size, oftentimes enrolled in the use value and appraisal or current use program, one and the same, just the words are used interchangeably there, or just large enough to support continued ongoing farm, agriculture, and forestry activities. Rural general is just sort of what you see almost everywhere. Rural generals, well, sorry, I got out order here. Rural conservation. The rural conservation is the darker green color that you see on the map. And there are a limited number of pathways for a location to be assigned that rural conservation. So most typically is if the land itself is already conserved. So has the landowner or some previous landowner sold their development rights to the Vermont Land Trust or some other type of organization that engages in that activity. So that's one example. Land over 2,500 feet in elevation. Don't think that comes into play in Barre City. Wetlands larger than 5 acres. So these are the mapped wetlands. The jurisdictional wetlands, and a good example of where you would see those are along the southern border. There's in particular one in the middle. There's a really odd sort of shape. That is almost certainly a wetland greater than 5 acres in size.
Brian, we're still showing a splash screen. I agree for the map. I don't know if you're.
I mean, I can show the map while I'm talking about it if you want.
Okay.
I thought you guys had paper maps in front of you, but actually,
they do have paper maps in front of them. I just wasn't sure if it sounded like you were beginning to show stuff. So no, you're good.
Okay. But it does strike me that the online folks don't have paper maps in front of them, so I'm gonna actually.
The map is in the packet, so I was.
Oh, it's in the packet. Okay,
I was looking at
great.
mine, but I don't know if others have found it to look at as well.
It would be nice if you pointed to what you were talking about while you are describing it so that we can follow along.
Okay, let me, I'll try.
This is a very big first day.
This is a very big first day.
I also
Oh, yeah.
received a packet that had 187
Oh,
pages in it.
You don't really get much.
So, we're just trying
And we
to
had
keep up.
5 days to read it.
Yeah.
Take it, digest it. We're here for questions. Okay.
Yeah, what I'm passing around are summaries of Act 250 and Act 181.
Yes,
They're
Act
like-
250 is
Correct,
the thing
yeah,
unto
so like,
itself.
what are the intentions and high notes of each of them for context?
Sure.
So do you see a different screen or still the same?
We're seeing your JS Pro screen.
Okay. So what I was talking about, wetlands, large wetlands, this is almost certainly an example of that. So anytime you see like a weird shape like that, for the most part, again, that's going to be because there's a wetland greater than 5 acres in size. And then river corridors and special flood hazard areas. And so, I'm sure that many of you looked at this map initially and sort of scratched your head and thought, rural conservation right in the middle of Barre City. Again, trying not to soapbox here. There's not a good category for these types of lands in our more urban settings. And the short version is I really wish they just never used the word rural for any of these. They did. We're stuck with them. And so that's the way we're proceeding. But for those of you, again, wondering why you're seeing, this green ribbon that kind of runs right through the middle of town, That is where that comes from.
Well,
You
can I
also,
ask a question about that?
sure, go ahead.
I'm just curious why that ribbon doesn't run through downtown.
That's a great question, David. Because existing state designated areas, so you have a state designated, I'm going to turn on a different data layer here. This little, not so little area in the black and white polka dots that you see there, that is your state designated downtown. And for state designations that existed previously, um, the full area, the full extent of those areas is essentially grandfathered into one of the big four, the downtown center, village center, planned growth area, or village area. And so for those pre-existing state designations, we include that whole boundary. So you'll see now, I'm going to turn that designation layer off, and you'll see that, this green and this green basically bump right up against that existing pre-existing state designation, David. And so as a result, anything within that area goes into that one of those core four classes. Outside of that area, we have a little bit more flexibility in the way that particular place is classified. And then,
This is
oh,
just
sure, go ahead,
one
Dan.
question. Based on the future land use classes, when we're looking at development that falls in your rural classifications already, what are the implications? We need to ask you to change that map? What are your thoughts on that?
So the short answer is no. That even the dark green color here, this rural conservation, does not imply that development's not allowed there. And again, it's the choice of words that the legislature used that didn't do people like me and Christian any favors as we go out to talk to our communities, because it is confusing. And frankly, I might even be misusing this a little bit, but there's not something better there. So that's point number one. Number two, I think it's just really important to go back to something that Christian mentioned, I think at the top of the conversation here. This isn't a zoning map. So the dark green, which the land use class is rural conservation, does not mean that you can't develop there. In fact, you could develop to your heart's content as long as your zoning bylaws and other sort of state regulations don't impede that.
But would
Yeah.
our municipal plan's future land use map talk to your future land use map? I mean, that's something that, you folks will be looking at when we get to that point. And if we're diametrically opposed at one point, what are the implications? And potentially nip that in the bud early.
And I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part, Janet. And potentially what?
Just make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of that is, the conversation that we're having right now. Part of this is a conversation that you will have at the full Board of Commissioners meeting in terms of how the commissioners, how the board wants to deal with these mapped flood hazard areas. Because again, there is not a category in the existing or the adopted land use classification scheme to adequately capture these areas that are potentially suitable for some development, but certainly not maybe the best place to put significant investments for future development.
I think that just, to me, the problem with that is this is going to be something that gets shown time and time again anytime anybody wants to try to do something in the North End. And it could in theory be a designated growth area, even though it's in the flood zone. It just means it has to meet the standards for development in a flood zone. So that's what my concern is. It's just going to throw an impediment potentially, even though it's not a hard and fast rule. it kind of throws an impediment to show all of this area where there's 100 houses, and all that is and like the senior citizen high rise and all that is in this area, and I just don't see that as being very reflective of what's there and what the city might wish to do in the future, because it seems to be an area that the city has made pretty clear they don't want to abandon or just, for example, buy out every property that flooded and make it into green space. So I'm just concerned that that's kind of expressing that. That's for what it's worth. I understand the challenges in categorizing things and not to minimize the fact that it isn't a flood zone, but it's just again a kind of a concern that I had.
Yeah, and it's you're not the first to express that concern. Barry does have. Well, I'm going to take a step back here, because you're also not the first person to use the word abandon, and I just want to be really careful with the language here, because that is absolutely not what we're advocating for here, is abandonment. I think it might be more accurate to say be very cautious about the way that you choose to invest either municipal funds or facilitate the investment of private funds in some of these high hazard areas. But I'm not saying, and the map is not trying to convey this notion of abandonment in these areas. I do think it is and will continue to be a difficult conversation. This is the map that we put together that's sort of at that proposal phase. There will be a conversation that the Board of Commissioners has about sort of their thoughts on the way that staff have developed this map. Christian and I have talked about potentially creating a new special use class. And Christian, I don't know if you want to talk about that or if you want me to talk about that.
Sure, I can jump in real quick. I think Janet brought up some really important points about this map and what it means, how it interfaces when you come to get your plan approved. And we're looking at our map, and we've, for better or worse, called something rural conservation, because hey, what else could we do, right? And now 5 years later, we're having to make a tough decision about an area cities plan. So that's a real concern. We want to make sure our planning is in parallel and in sync. We talked about Act 250 again. Sorry for the new folk.
Okay.
The region is a party in an Act 250 permit, and if there's, say, a project that is otherwise not negatively impacting the flood, putting life at risk or property at risk, but yet it's in this conservation area, which is tied to a statutory definition of what a rural conservation area is, it might get difficult for our commission to write a comment on that project that is in support, right? Even if we might, as a planning commission, support the project. So I think there is some hard questions, like Brian said, that we need to be asking here and talking about. So that what Brian just brought up is we were given 11 statutory land use areas. We looked at the State House in Montpelier and said, well, that doesn't fall into any of these. We're going to create a special land use for that, and we're going to call it State House, or maybe we just called it special land use. The thought is, well, what Barry's unique. This also impacts Waterbury to an extent. To a lesser extent, Montpelier, because all their existing designations are so large, everything got grandfathered in, but eventually probably will affect Montpelier. These are downtowns that have that inundation flooding. It's not the erosional stuff, it's the water coming up and flooding houses. So what Brian and I have talked about is this idea of something like, we don't have a good name for it yet, but something like resilience infill, where we create a new land use and we tie it to a definition that really lays out our goals as a region to not exacerbate flood impacts on site or elsewhere, to not put life at risk, to not further put municipal assets at risk and otherwise create new liabilities on a municipal balance sheet, and to not impact private property. and then rezone, or not rezone, I don't want to use that word, redraw the lines in that river area, for example, in Berry City, and maybe a little further beyond just that river flood hazard area, and call that resilience infill. So.
Yeah. I think that makes, to me, that makes more sense. But, also just thinking that, for development in those areas, the flood building requirements and all are pretty stringent. And they're going to manage a lot of that stuff, no matter what the map says. That somebody's not going to be able to build something that's going to flood. They're not, it has to be protected or above the flood level. It has to consider what it does to downstream risks and all of those things, I think.
Yeah.
So, I think the idea of having some kind of other designation that reflects that without making it kind of the rural, whatever, but understand that it's a major housing area in the city, and there's standards for redoing or, upgrading existing, and there's talk of all sorts of different ideas of new things. And I would hate to have this kind of map be something that people point at as well, you can't do that though.
So just want to throw on a couple of responses to that. One, where we stand, Barre has flood hazard regulations, does not have river corridor regulations. So this area could never qualify for one of those 4 until those regulations are adopted. And the second piece is there's also an element of this is the regional future land use map. It's a visionary document, but all that Act 181 stuff aside, this is our vision of the region and what our commissioners, Janet included, how they prioritize land use throughout the area. And one thing our plan has been fairly consistent on is the idea that we don't want to exacerbate our risks in the floodplain. So while I hear what you're saying, David, there's also an element that this is a reflection of the goals and policies of CVRPC. Rural conservation in a downtown, and that's not really necessarily a fair reflection of our plan. But something between that and, pull out all the stops, densification, is probably where we would fall, right?
That's probably where we all fall.
Yeah, of course. I think that it's a reasonable place.
So when we're talking about like new structures or new housing opportunities, when you guys came up with the rural conservation, is part of that, because I understand from David's perspective that like when you have new construction or you modify existing construction, there are things that have to be followed. But are the access ways and like roads part of like this classification? Like, could someone be stranded in that area?
Like the city.
Like if it were to flood, even if you're in like a flood safe building, if you wouldn't be able to like leave the structure,
you would be stuck.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Yeah, even if you're in a brand new, it would be a good example. Still, I forget the name of the nice new building across the
I
street.
think the best example is if you're at the fire station and there's major flooding, you can't get trucks out of there. So they have to park them somewhere else, as an example.
I guess where I'm thinking is that if a developer wanted to come in, while we wouldn't want to necessarily like stop someone from building in the north end for like quality of life, peace of mind, it would probably be in the city's best interest to try to find land for them elsewhere.
We're definitely encouraging, and we can talk about elsewhere in the region. I mean, Jan's probably thinking there is no elsewhere.
Yeah, there isn't.
Not within various city limits, but yes, we're obviously where we can relocate people to higher ground. That is the preferred option. Plainfield is the most active example of that.
But that's opposed to what ACCD says about compacting your downtown urban centers and keeping your rural areas more rural with less housing.
Yeah.
So there's way too much opposition of policy
Oh,
already.
absolutely.
Yeah. Everything's on one hand.
Yeah, I think too for new people that are moving to this area and they're learning about the relationship between Barre City and Barre Town.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty hard to, like you were saying, use the term rural when we're focusing on Barre City and we're all pretty much in agreement that we need to get more housing going on. We want to meet these goals, but how do we do that without utilizing that floodplain? And is the floodplain even safe? Not safe as a loose term, but like appropriate to build structures on that, like something that might be elevated where there's storage for vehicles underneath or something like that, like almost what you see on the coast.
Yeah, looking across the street is a prime example. What's the new building?
Barre City Place.
Barre City Place. That was built above the flood hazard. So in 2003, the waters came up, never reached the first floor because it was built above the expected flood area.
But cars in the parking lot did wash away.
Ruined.
Yeah.
Ruined, gone. Yep.
But one of the things that happens is when a street floods or parking lot floods, when the water recedes, it goes away and the damage is not making a house uninhabitable or a business uninhabitable. So there is some difference there.
Cars become negligible.
Sure.
And so it's probably some mix. You're probably not putting back the same level of density even in the north end, and you're probably finding other areas to offset and store water, just lower waters during flood events, but it's it's a whole mix, and that's where something like a resilience zone seems to be an opportunity to potentially put us as a region kind of as a leader in this idea of recognizing that we have existing development in our valley floors that floods, and we want to minimize that risk. How do we do it? Right up to the point where maybe we have to, abandon. We don't know, right? If these sort of events get more frequent, I shudder to think.
Well, the reason why we don't have river corridor regulations is because it would make development almost impossible in the north end at this point.
Sure.
So I have never pursued that based on a recommendation from one of Christian's former people. Said if you adopt river corridor, nobody in the north end is going to be able to improve their building because it's going to be too difficult. And so I've always been hesitant to go after river corridor. I just, back to Brian's point about 10, 15 minutes ago, pictures are 1,000 words, and pictorially, and the usage of rural general, rural conservation, it's going to be very, very difficult to explain to people what it all means. And that it's not, as you say, it's not a regulatory document, but yet it kind of is.
It has impacts.
Yes, for sure.
It is given deference.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't be naive about it.
Right.
Can I speak to another location on the map, and that's the location of Prospect Heights is listed as the yellow kind of rural. And I'm wondering, given that there are multiple grants in excess of $5 million to build infrastructure into that property and have development, whether that would be better, and actually the land, which would I guess be to the west of it, might be more appropriate to be the pink color.
Looking at the map, could you describe where Prospect Heights is to us that aren't as familiar with the downtown?
Sure, Brian, if you want to zoom out a little bit, this
Yeah.
is Prospect Heights.
There.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that Brian reviewed roughly 35,000 parcels across central Vermont. So there are some parcels where he's not fully versed on all local development. We saw this one this afternoon. I was like, oh, they're going to point that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've just so everybody knows, I've got little marks all over that I'm
Great.
gonna be
That's why we're
talking
here.
to.
We're looking for little marks all over.
Changes, this can't be this color, it needs to be this color.
Cool.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah.
You're amazing.
But anyhow, that was my other area that I just kind of noticed. And as I said, the area to the west of it that's already mostly developed might also be better being in the more growth area. That's just my thought, but particularly the Prospect Heights, just because there's a lot of money, there's a lot of state grants already there. There's a development partner has been chosen. The city will own the property, so it's a city, it's going to be a city-run project, whether that maybe should be mapped differently.
So with planned growth areas, and it's hard to speak to the Prospect Height one in particular, but in more generally speaking, planned growth areas, like all of the different land use classes, do have some requirements that they need to meet in order to be included in there. And some of that is, proximity to the downtown center, the presence of multimodal transport infrastructure. I certainly know that the water and sewer side of things are pretty well locked down there, but you'll see, and maybe I don't have the right water and sewer data, but to me this shows the water and sewer service area basically terminating at, and again, ignore the parcel in the middle there, but terminating at the edge of where I have this pinkish purplish
Yeah.
color. So
You're correct about that, but the point is that there's north of $5 million to build that infrastructure, and there's capacity in the city system and those lines to have that. So it's,
okay, well, I'm not saying we can't change the map. I'm saying that based on the data that I used, this was my interpretation, and that it's not just a matter of we want to change it from yellow to pink. There are requirements that need to be met, and so I'm learning more about this now with the planning work that's going on around here. But I would still need to look into the does this area meet the complete streets protocols? Because that's another deal breaker. So you could meet 4 of the 5 requirements, but if you don't have that 5th one, then by default you're not eligible for one of those core 4 areas. So, and I just want it to be really clear, like, this isn't about what I want. This is my interpretation of the data. And if we want to dispute my interpretation of the data, I'm perfectly open to that, because I don't know everything about all 35,000 parcels that I looked at. But it's not also just like I just drew a line and decided, like, yep, this is the edge of where the planned growth area is going to be, and all the rest of Barre is their version of rural. So, again, it goes back to this. We can certainly try to fit additional parcels into that higher density classification. But at the end of the day, it's also not just up to us at the Regional Planning Commission, because we have to take this map to the Land Use Review Board, and the Land Use Review Board will have questions about, well, why did you include this, or why did you exclude that? And they also have some, essentially the ultimate decision-making authority, in that they approve both our map and our regional plan. So I would just say, like, in short, this is why we're out talking to our municipalities, right? We always have more to learn here. Certainly taking notes about this. And if it seems like we can fit that into that category, and it passed into that planned growth area category, and it passes the straight face test, and we can defend that in front of the Land Use Review Board, then I'm all about it. Because, one thing that we've very clearly pointed out here in this conversation is that there is a lot of high risk flood areas throughout the city. And where you are outside of those mapped and known flood hazard areas, if the conditions are even mostly right for more dense development, as staff, I know that we would support that. My suspicion would be that the Board of Commissioners would support that as well. So, your point's taken about the Prospect Heights and the surrounding area. And like I said, if we can justifiably convert that from yellow to pink, then I'm more than happy to do so.
Well, probably it's something you could talk to Janet about, or whatever, but there's plans being developed. This parcel actually has an approved subdivision on it. It's not reflected here, but it was never built, and it wouldn't meet standards today. But I think there's lots laid out in there.
Also, Brian, I have a question for you and Christian that may be helps this conversation. Is this a living document?
Oh, yeah.
Right, so
Yeah.
if something doesn't meet the classification right now,
That's right.
doesn't mean that once like development and infrastructure and the Prospect Heights like continues to be built out and we can check those boxes,
Yeah, so one of the,
doesn't mean that it won't reflect that in the future.
that's right. So one of the things
Yeah.
Brian brought up is he has his data set there. Where's the water, wastewater? So
Yeah,
he's
totally.
sitting in his office and he's looking through, he's like, all right, these areas are covered, they should be part of the growth area. If there's a capital plan, and it sounds like there is a capital plan to expand that water, wastewater, that's the kind of, the and why that we need so we can justify it to the land use review board. So the question really isn't, hey, are there things we think we need to adjust the boundaries on? It's, hey, are there things we should adjust and why? Give us the justification because we will be asked. And we want to make sure that we are able to get our plan approved by providing all the support and evidence the land use review board will ask of us.
So what are the pros and cons of us like pushing to try to give you that information now for that block to be made versus waiting for it to meet the qualifications and updating later?
Knowing that project well enough, knowing that it has legs and is moving now, we want it on the map when we approve our plan in October.
Okay, so we have,
Because, well, in this case, it's not gonna change much. I think there'll be a sense of consistency that here we have a planned growth area and growth is happening in the planned growth area,
Okay.
right? So that sounds very good, but that's really mostly words. If it's rural, general, as it's mapped here, it just means that if you exceed 50 units, or rather, if it's rural general, it just means if you exceed 10 units, it's gonna need an Act 250 permit.
Gotcha.
Well, if it's planned growth area, it's gonna be 50 units. Well, it's still gonna exceed both those numbers, still gonna need an Act 250 permit. So on one hand, it doesn't really matter. On the other hand, I think there's, from a planning perspective, from a messaging perspective, it makes a lot of sense to get done sooner.
Oh, another perspective to that is that there's some housing goals. And this proposed development that's in the process would actually take a pretty large step towards meeting those goals.
Yeah,
If it's adding 100 units, that's almost a third of what the target is.
well, that's a good point. If when we add it in, your target's going to go up a little bit too.
Yeah.
Because it's
The
all.
unobtainable number then?
That's right, that's
So we know,
Whole second
but having units, even for now, out like in the yellow, it doesn't mean that they wouldn't count towards our housing.
Oh, of course,
targets.
everything counts. It's not like we
Right.
only count them in one area and only count them in the other area and then add the two numbers together. We just look at that bit.
And then the other question that I have is, you said for messaging purchases, who is the audience for that messaging?
Honestly, it's your regional commissioners, it's you all, your planning commission, it's your governing body, it's the legislature, it's your legislatures.
Okay.
Developers to a degree, they're seeing, hey, the process is working, there's a planned growth area, and that's where the growth is happening. I'm gonna go talk to Janet about their planned growth areas and where else they want development. It's a message to the legislature that, hey, look, we did that thing you wanted. We identified where we wanted to encourage growth, and lo and behold, that's where the growth is happening. So because the program's so new, well, it's not really a program, I think that's what I mean by messaging. It's
Okay.
just like, it's just doing what it's supposed to.
Yeah, and.
Yeah, I just want
Map
to offer one point here as well, just in relation to that last question. We don't need, or you shouldn't wait for development to happen necessarily, but as you've laid out, there's a lot of planning work that's already gone on behind the scenes, the capital planning, the pursuit of grants, things like that. But also as you work through your municipal plan, which seems like it's going to happen in relatively short order, you might find some discrepancies at a later date where, okay, we've got some new money, we're going to put some more infrastructure in a place where there isn't currently infrastructure. You don't need to wait for the development proposal, and you probably shouldn't wait. You should engage with us at that planning level so that if there are changes that you want to see at some point in the future to the future land use map, that that we can do that, because depending on the size of the change, and I don't remember what the cutoff acreage is at this point because I feel like it's changed a couple times, but depending on the size of the change, it's essentially it could be, if it's small enough, a fairly simple, okay, we changed the map, we put it out for public notice, and then we're done. Or if we're going to change, all of, all the south end of Barre, for example, then that might, for us, kick off a process where we have to go through a full readoption of the regional plan. Now, I'm not saying we're only willing to do one or the other. I'm just saying that in response to is this a living document? It very much is, and we should be engaging over time. And certainly, as you undertake new and additional planning activities in the city, if you have big changes afoot, we should talk about that so we can make sure that the regional future land use map reflects those changes.
Is that as a tool for us, since we have all of our different overlays on our website, would this be an available overlay that we can compare with our zoning sections, so that we can make sure that, if it's a growth area, are we able to visually see if it's zoned correctly to support that growth?
Once it's set, I can have it put on the GIS. That's
Okay.
not a problem.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. It's such a great visual to be able to see those different areas, that to make sure that we're in alignment with what we're doing, having this in mind would be helpful.
Sure. Yeah, as a Montpelier's council meeting last night, they did a nifty little thing. I'm sure Brian knows how to do it, where they just linked the two maps, their future land use map and our future land use map. So you go to the website and you see both of them. And you scroll this way on that one, they both go together. And so wherever you go, you can constantly compare the two. Anyway, but remember, we do try to follow your lead.
Where did the housing number projections come from? Did I miss where that
So
calculation came
Vermont
from?
Housing and Finance Authority developed them on behalf of the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. The highest high-end number, I think Lori included a brief description on how they were calculated on page 10. The 30-year lower target assumes the number of year-round households will grow by 1.02% per year based on the average growth from 2016 to 2019. The 2030 number is based on 2019 to 2022. We look out to 2050. The higher target is based on the growth rate from 1950 to 1924, right? So they kind of picked some points, drew a line, then continued it on into the future.
Does this, I would be interested to know if the counts also accounted for, Barre has a very low household age average, but as a whole, I don't know that a large part of our population will be here in 2050.
I think that's true. If you look at the state population projections, we do begin to see decline, certainly before 2050. And that's part of why we see these staggeringly high numbers. This is a public policy by the legislature and the governor to try to turn those numbers around. From planners, we're like, oh, we can't do that, but that's just, we function on different planes. This is more.
Yeah. Okay.
This is a statewide aspiration.
Okay.
I'm just sometimes flabbergasted how they arrive at things based on the census and some of the other entities that claim they know our population. Nobody has asked me. We didn't build one house last year. I report once a year to the federal government how many houses and how many housing units have been built.
What, the permit's closed?
Yeah, and I'm just you guys heard me at the Regional Planning Commission meeting last month. I just find the housing targets ludicrous.
I did find the actual number of new resident purchases from taxation.
Yeah.
504 units sold to individuals, not families, for change to living trust.
our property is 64% rental now. It keeps going up. So we don't have a lot of owner occupied. And this is where I think Barre City struggles to meet a lot of goals overall, because we have for lack of term, a transient community, right? A renter might stay a year, they might stay 10 years, who knows?
Yeah.
But it's a rental.
That perfect storm too of having a couple of years of natural disasters is certainly not helping.
Yeah.
There's a ton of units for sale right now.
Yeah.
And they're falling apart. They're not gonna, we're just sitting on a bunch of properties right now that I have a hard time believing that these can happen based on even the demand we're seeing.
And a
I
lot
feel
of,
like we would have to knock units down to attain these new numbers, and then obviously it's a little bit of a wash.
Then there's just the cost of construction.
Right,
It's
well,
crazy.
and we know too that like a lot of the downtown buildings were never meant for people to live in. And so, like Bob tried to convert those units over the hardware shop because they don't have like bathrooms and things plumbed. And the cost to convert them was like astronomical. It just like wasn't anything that he could entertain, and he had a healthy budget set aside for it.
Yeah.
And he couldn't get the tax credits to do it.
I've heard like the Matheson School, I think it's a pretty good example, like it screams like residential housing, but
Totally.
the furnace repairs that I've heard secondhand about would be like, I mean, the whole thing would just cost so much money.
Well, also, like, there's the idea that you want to preserve some of the historical aspects of the city too. Like, there's a lot of like culture and a lot of like, some of those very pride pieces. Like then, forgetting the word. For Barre Heritage Days, which are coming up very soon, and like, so how do we keep those more historic buildings, but also like weigh in the cost of like maintaining those at the same time, while also having this other goal of like making our population more sustainable.
Yeah. It's great to have like a housing target. Whether or not there's funding to actually like do that is another story.
And just while we're on the topic, so as you rewrite your municipal plan, one of the requirements is that you acknowledge your housing target and plan for it.
Your housing target or
Our housing target we've given you, now it's yours. And so I think as your RPC, we're working hard to figure out what's some template language towns can just put in.
Yeah.
Just says, hey, we're gonna we want to study housing. We want to look at our short-term rental population. Just some stuff to put in there so that when we as the region get plan and review it against state and regional standards, we can say, oh, no, they have the stuff in there that they have the goals they need to address this thing the state has asked us all to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, presenting that, is that, that's just gonna try to help us get more state funding for housing or grant
So
funding,
when you
or-
write your plan, there's a 12-page checklist we have that the Regional Planning Commission will share with you early on in the rewrite process that distills all the state statutes outlining the requirements of a municipal plan before it can be approved. The reason you want a municipal plan approved, to get to your point, is exactly that. Yes, access to grants.
And are we like directly competing with our neighboring communities that also are trying to match these goals? Like, I would
no.
imagine there's not
No,
a
it's not.
definite amount of this funding available.
No, we might have throw an ice cream party if someone meets their goals. But.
Well, I would imagine that there is some, like if a developer says, hey, I want to develop in your area and I'm trying to choose between town A or town B.
Okay, yeah.
They have a finite number of funds. There is a little bit, I think, of like wine or dine.
Yeah, I think that's fair. If you're sitting here in central Vermont and you see Barre City has access to Tier 1B, Berlin and their Newtown Center by the mall has access to Tier 1A, let's say. Now you're thinking, oh, I can build housing up top and have commercial on the bottom and have no M250 for any of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe developers on the margin are going to be making those choices.
Yeah. One of the
Yeah.
things that the Barre Area Development talked about at our last downtown merchants meeting is that if RK Miles, does fully leave that spot, is the concept of our commercial corridor really expanding all the way down to that current area and really expanding, more retail, more people past our current designated downtown.
That's, right through the heart of that flooding.
Yep,
That's-
maybe if it builds up.
That's part of the,
He's talking about trying to entice other, people who want to do business in central Vermont into
Sure.
the area.
that's part of the municipal planning process, is to talk about those things and talk about what are called the gateways into the city. So when you're driving into Berry City from the south or the north, a discussion for another time, but it's not the most inviting introduction and welcome to the city.
I think we'd all love to see it receive a nice facelift. But are people gonna wanna go there with the risk of
Right.
flooding, so.
And we heard post-flooding, those meetings we held at the Mutwa and at the Labor Hall, the residents in the north end don't want high rises. They
Right.
don't want big buildings. They want what they've always had.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so it's a really hard conversation.
And then there's also pockets pretty much all over town, but really in that area of FEMA lots that would restrict higher plot
Sure.
buildings.
I mean, I wonder if people would be more enticed to the design of ground floor garages, though. I mean, you're still gonna have nice residential looking, regular looking homes, but maybe the living quarters are up on the second floor to start.
Well, those
But
homes
that's
that
all-
are being elevated in Berry City and Montpelier will look exactly like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's enticing. If it means, for me, especially as a young individual looking to try to get into a starter home and build some equity, I would definitely roll the dice on that. Yeah.
One of the challenges, in Berry City for new construction is, the cost of building a new house is probably more than, in Berry City, is probably more than you can sell it for right now. And so all regulations aside, that's a challenge. And most of the development that's taking place in the city is subsidized by grants. And that's because that's the only way that a lot of that can be done. And it's a pretty tough situation, but that's part of the challenge. And there are some, interesting things going on with small houses and prefab things and all that might help with some of those things, but it's just a challenge. And for a developer, if they look at, well, if I want to build a house of a certain size and all in, it costs me $350,000. And in Berry City, I can sell that for 360,000. And in Montpelier, I can sell it for 450,000. Where am I going to build that house? And that's a challenge that the city has, and that we're not going to solve it today, but it's just a underlying thing that's going on.
I got a question about the rural conservation square that's towards the top here. Does that butt right up to the Fecto
Where?
buildings,
Right here.
right?
That is the cemetery.
That's a cemetery.
To the left of that, Brian?
Oh, yeah, no, that,
It's the
Okay.
he's pointing to the little block.
No,
Yeah.
to the left of that, Brian.
Okay, the
That one.
cemetery, that makes sense. Because I was thinking, all right, anytime I think of new development around here, it's the Fecto thing going on, but that is outside the city boundary, so.
That's a little cemetery over there.
Yep,
Little cemetery.
Not the Hope, because there's the Hope in the middle.
Oh.
No,
But
it's,
see where-
yes, that's where his pointer is, that's another cemetery.
Yeah,
Oh,
it is.
gotcha. That's where I think the city overlay would be really helpful
Sure,
too, because
yeah.
you can see what is actually municipal zone,
Right.
what is a residential zone.
and that big area that's right next to Hope Cemetery that looks like it's going to be Hope Cemetery expansion will probably be saying as such, I would imagine. I drive by it every day.
Cow pasture?
Not the cow pasture, no, it's like another, it's not a huge area, but, if you're on Route 14, you're facing Hope Cemetery, you would be heading more towards, Berrytown. There's a there's a big field there that they just have mowed. I mean, I look at it and I just assume it's going to eventually be more.
Is that
Hope
the area
Cemetery,
where
but-
they've been putting the extra snow from the town?
Yes, you
over
know where the
Yes,
snow dump
yep.
is, and then above that, there's the trailer.
Mhm.
That whole area
The
there.
town city line runs right through there.
Okay, yeah.
So Hope Cemetery stops
Mhm.
before the snow dump area,
Okay,
if that can give you a visual.
yeah.
So I guess I want to know, Dr. Boyd and Christian, is there some kind of deadline you would love to hear from us on thoughts and changes and
Yes.
whatever? What do you think?
So, we'd love to get we got a lot of comments tonight.
Yeah.
If you want to send me home with your map, Janet, you can. I'll bring it into the office tomorrow. Or you want to take a little time, you can just scan it and send it to us. We want to get your comments as soon as possible. We are meeting with the Land Use Review Board on the 23rd of July. And during that time, we're going to be bouncing some new ideas off them. They're going to be grilling us on why we mapped the things we mapped, the way we mapped them.
All 35,000 parcels?
Everyone. We're going to be doing a fast, rapid fire. No stopping to drink for a drink of water. So if there's something like we want to bring this special use idea to them. We want to get their unofficial yes on that before we put it on the map. We want to talk about Prospect Heights. So, justifying no, they have a capital plan. They're investing. They're running water, wastewater up to that lot. They're building 90 new units. And so even the stuff that isn't on the current map as it went in on the pre-application starts to get the unofficial yes. So by the time we put in the final, we're not laying any mines for ourselves. So on one hand, as soon as possible. In the little packet I gave you, there's a resolution about opting into Tier 1B.
Mm-hmm.
We'd like that by the 1st of September. That's an action from the governing body. So ideally, the planners make a recommendation to the council, and the council ideally takes up that recommendation to either opt in or not, recognizing that it has no impact on Tier 1A if you decide to apply later.
Does that process require public hearings, or is that just?
The opt-in? No.
Yeah.
No, it does not. No, it does not.
And remember, you guys have been in front of city council already,
Yeah.
and we had the discussion, and I said to the council, I'm in favor of Tier 1B. And I got a bunch of nods. So now we're getting to the more formal place.
David, just for your information, all the hearings are on us. So we'll be running hearings probably in early September and then again in October. And that's when any Tier 1B mapping will be heard and open to public comment there. And now Brian's got an alternative way you can submit comments as well.
Yeah, so I just pasted into the chat a URL that links to this interactive map. So whichever one of you lucky folks is writing the minutes, if you want to include that URL in there, that'd be a great way to hopefully broaden the reach. So when you click that link, you get this little splash box here that gives you a pretty simple overview of what the map is. And now after you click that explore button, you see the entire region, and the yellow crosses that you see in the image are places where people have left comments. And if I zoom in on the map, zoom in far enough on the map, you'll notice over on the left my list of crosses keeps getting shorter. I can click on any one of those. It's going to zoom me into that location, and it's going to show me, you, whoever's looking at the map, the comment that someone left for that location. So it's really nice that you can check out what other people think. but you can also add your own thoughts. And to do that, click the feedback button over here in the lower left. And then you've got a few different options here. You can actually just type an address into the prompt here, and it's going to do a search on all the addresses in the region. So I could choose our office and then drop a point that drops a point in the map, and then I just type in my comment and I would click submit. And then once I click submit, that point is registered on the map, and then anyone else would be able to see that. You can also, if you don't know the address, you can just navigate to a location on the map and just click on the map, and it takes you to that same opportunity to provide some comment here. Ignore the likes and dislikes thing. It's like I don't know. There's some sort of gremlin in the background that won't let me get rid of that, no matter how many times I try. But hopefully, when you look at this in the near future, you won't see the likes and dislikes thing. One other thing that you may find helpful when you're navigating this, you can look at the legend. So over on the top right here is a legend. So stakeholder feedback, as I mentioned, the yellow crosses. Municipal boundaries are the thick, heavy weighted black lines. Parcel boundaries, light weighted black lines, and then all of the different future land use areas according to that Act 181 methodology. You can also, and there's not a whole lot to toggle on and off here, but there's a layer list in the lower right-hand corner. And you see as I roll over these, there's a little eyeball that shows up on the right-hand side. So if I click on the eyeball, poke it in the eye, so to speak, it turns the data layer off. So I just turned that off, toggled that off, the future land use. Maybe the parcel lines are just in the way. Certainly the parcel lines aren't doing a whole lot for me at this scale. So maybe it's not worth looking at them until you zoom further in, but you get the idea, and you can toggle those layers on and off as you need or as might benefit you. The most important thing is you can enter as many comments as you like. This isn't a one-time shot. So tell your friends, tell your neighbors, so you can come up with the most creative comment. But really just looking at the areas, it doesn't necessarily have to be somewhere in Barre City. It could be really anywhere in the region. If you've got some personal knowledge of location, maybe you've got a camp or a good friend's house or family's house in another municipality, and you like or don't like what you see, we certainly want to hear about it. So please do engage with this map as you have time, and if you have the ability to spread the URL around so that other folks can have access to the map and provide feedback, that would be fantastic as well.
One last question. Do our historic districts mean anything in this context? We have two.
So
what do you think, Brian?
yes. Sorry, let me get back to my. So in the designation, so again, I just got a ton of data. It's not necessary to be able to read all of them. This one's not a good example. In fact, is your historic district, do they overlap with your downtown?
It does, but it only goes as far as not quite to 62 and Barre City building. And then
so
Park Historic District, which people forget about, and I don't want it forgotten about.
So where the historic districts, the state register historic districts have played out in other areas. So I mentioned before, or there was a question before about, why does the green stripe stop at the edge of the downtown center and then pick up on the other end? And that goes back to your state designated downtown already existing in that area being grandfathered in. When we're looking at these areas around the existing downtown centers and village centers, those state designated areas. We also look at the state register historic districts as one possible avenue for expanding those, expanding the area of the possible tier one eligible classes. So the downtown center, village center, planned growth area, village area. In your case, and I'll just make up an example here, but suppose you had a historic district that sort of ran to the northeast out of town and stretched all the way up into this yellowish parcel right here. That would be a reason to consider including the yellowish parcel and all the other parcels that underlie that historic district, to include those in one of the tier one eligible categories. But again, because you've got the overlap with your designated downtown and your historic districts, it doesn't necessarily provide any potential for further expansion of those tier one eligible areas.
Thank you.
All right, it's a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Most of the time, it's not that intense.
I
I promise.
That's here for it.
Don't believe you, but
My
that's okay.
computer is about ready to.
So is there anything else we need to cover with this, or are we good for now on this agenda item?
I mean, I've said what I wanted to say. If you folks still have questions, I'm happy to stick around. Also happy to follow up with you as need be outside the meeting.
Okay, great, thank you. So, commissioners, just for what it's worth, and you're mostly new, I usually try to get our meetings wrapped up around 7. That's not because it's a rule or law, but just note it is 7:16. We have some old business on the agenda, and I don't know if we want to dig into that tonight or not. So I'm open to people's thoughts. Another thing, and Janet's going to give me a dirty look when I say it, but in the past, the commission has met twice a month, the second and fourth Thursday, and we've gone back to just meeting once a month. If we have a lot of things we want to work on, we could talk about going back to twice a month meetings. My biggest concern is that Janet is being pulled in a lot of ways right now, with the city manager leaving, with never being able to fill an assistant planner spot, and a lot of grant responsibilities. So it's, setting up another meeting and attending another meeting is another thing on her plate. But whatever folks think both about, if we want to continue tonight on to anything else, and also maybe not for decision now, but we could meet more frequently than once a month if that's the desire of the group.
That's right, if that's your desire, I'll make it work.
I wonder if there's like a happy medium, just considering we didn't get to like the second half of our agenda for today. And just looking at some of the items from the meetings of last minute, it looks like these were discussions that were tabled from the last meeting to future meetings. I wonder if we could just have like a catch-up meeting instead of just saying like committing to 2 times a month. We say like we just have a special meeting to like try and catch up on some of the old business items, rather than say we're committing to 2 times a month.
We don't have to commit to 2 times a month. And at least from my perspective, if we don't have business to do, I don't think we need a meeting. It's if we have stuff to do, we, just have that option, but then you kind of have to keep that in mind for your calendars, that it's 2 times a month. But the suggestion of just doing one and see how it goes and see if we can get caught up on some of this is absolutely fine.
I like that idea. I mean, I don't want to be the reason to say I don't want to do 2 meetings a month. I just want to make sure that I can commit to the timeline, and especially with taking the minutes and everything. Are there agenda items that have as important of deadlines as the one that we just discussed?
No deadlines, but they're discussions. Like, for example, I'll just be very quick. The Act 250, the Act 176 cannabis was a leftover, it wasn't tabled, it's just kind of a leftover from last month's meeting. The way it got rolled out and approved in the House got totally changed when it got signed. It went from a cannabis consumption to a cannabis event. So the difference is, we don't have to worry about people setting up tents to have a smoke out, or, you know, what they do at UVM, right? The ultimate final legislation that got passed was, they're gonna hand out 10 event permits a year to the entire state of Vermont. So that's not 10 per Barre, 10 per Montpelier. That means Forbins could have a tent at Heritage Festival. But there are caveats. If there's already alcohol being sold there, they won't be able to have their tent.
Sure.
So it changed, so that was the leftover. And then our last agenda item is just an ongoing discussion that we don't wanna lose off the table.
Okay.
for
Okay.
sure.
All right, so maybe we don't need a second meeting this month. We
And
can-
I can condense that a little bit better in, say, the meeting minutes, if everyone would like, because I just breezed right through Act 176.
One of the things that happened this month is the regional commission request to be on the agenda came pretty late. So that kind of pushed things aside. So that's, kind of new going in, that there was a lot, Janet and I talked about, that we probably wouldn't be able to get through everything if the discussion with the regional commission took any time, which it did, which I think is good.
Yeah, they wanted to come in under public comment, and I was like, Brian, you're not gonna be able to do this in 5 minutes with 5 new commissioners.
Yeah. Crash course, big time,
Yeah.
but appropriate, I mean, I will definitely be listening to the recording tomorrow morning, probably before I go to work. And I did see the template online the other day for the minutes. I think it was online. I saw a template for it somewhere. But I just wanted to reiterate, so I have 5 days to put all of the minutes for this meeting together, and then send it to all of us. I mean,
So if you would like, I could do tonight's minutes for you. But in the future, it would mean something in draft that I can post on the city website within 5 business days.
okay.
And
Yeah.
it may contain errors, you
Sure,
may
sure,
have gotten the wrong motioner, the wrong seconder, that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at.
Need to meet the law, that's all.
I was looking at how it was done, here before. And
Yes.
that's definitely something I'm more than happy to handle. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to do the first one, yeah, and then, since I got the crash course here today, by the next meeting, I will either procure a laptop from work or just buy myself a new one, because I've been procrastinating that. And the document for the minutes is something that I can access electronically.
Yeah, it generally, just in terms of public sector process, you should send the minutes to Janet. Another thing about communicating as planning commissioners, so we have to be really mindful of the public meeting laws, which means that if we want something to go to all the commissioners, we really should do it through Janet.
Okay.
So that it can become part of the public record, instead of a lot of back and forth between individual members, particularly if it's more than might make up a quorum, then you've just had an illegal meeting. So that's something just to be mindful of, particularly for those of you who didn't spend a career working in public sector and seeing how those things can be a mess.
I read the rules and terms and definitions that Nicholas had emailed us. It was riveting.
Just like all of this is rude.
So it sounds like we'll just plan the next meeting for the second Thursday of August 13th. And we'll have the old business items will be on the agenda, and I hope we'll make a priority to get to those.
I was gonna say, David, that I can take the feedback really from the last meeting, plus some confirmed, I think, good stats from Department of Revenue, and kind of like pare down that proposal so that it's less data heavy and kind of more
Mhm.
to the point.
Okay, so I don't think we have a need for executive session. Are there any staff updates, Janet?
No, just read everything I threw together for all of you. Just know there's just a lot going on.
It's like the last pages of the huge agenda packet. And the next thing is roundtable, which is just an opportunity for any planning commissioners to share any thoughts or whatever that they might wish to. So now's your chance if you want to say anything or you want to bring a topic up that maybe would be for future discussion or share some information you might have that be relevant to the work that we do.
Or just something in general you want to share, like city councilors do off-topic roundtable things. They did this
Yes.
other thing, or there's, the coin collections are coming up, or something, right?
I'll throw out there that
Everyone had a great 4th of July.
I'm really pleased that the city repaired the lights in the pedway next to Pearl Street. That was huge. They've been out of commission for over a year now. And it wasn't just a quick, easy fix. I saw that they were out there quite a lot. So that was very welcome. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other roundtable things anybody wants to bring up? If not, we could have a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
I think we have I think Maddie said yes. Let's adjourn. Can somebody second that?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Not debatable. So all in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Thank you. So we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody, and I hope we haven't scared you away.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.